Wanted to take some time today to look at some of my armor and the condition of things. So I'm behind the Jeep. I'm looking at the rear shocks, and what you can see there is I run the Off-Road Evolution lower control arm / shock absorber skid plate. So really good product. You can see they definitely take a beating. I'm pleased with both of them. The install wasn't difficult, and I basically went with Evo on these because at the time as I remember, Rancho didn't make one that also protected the shock absorber mount. Now they do. So I have Rancho in the front and Off-Road Evolution in the rear. But I'm pleased with that. And then you can see my Rancho differential armor and the rock glider. The rear has held up better than the front. The front had taken a lot of severe beatings, and as you know from previous videos, I had to buy the new rock slider portion and change it out because the fingers there that bolt into the differential armor ended up just getting so severely bent. But I'm going to be crawling under the Jeep and taking a look at this armor. I've got some pictures from the armor when I installed it, and going to crawl under it really good. Tell you one of the flaws. I mean, overwhelmingly it's phenomenal, and it did what I needed it to do. I have a 2.5 inch suspension lift, and at the time I was running 35-inch tires, and with the long wheelbase, the components under there, transfer case, gas tank, etc., motor, were very, very much exposed. So I knew that for the type of wheeling that I was going to do, that I was going to have to invest in some really good 1/4 inch thick armor, and you can see that that's what I did here. I run the Rock Hard 4x4 XHD 1/4 inch steel belly armor system for the 4-door JK Wrangler. Nice close-up of the lower control arm shock mount skid plate by Off-Road Evolution. Obviously I gotta pressure wash this thing and get her all cleaned up, and every now and then I give her a nice coat of paint, but definitely does a really good job, and I'm pleased with it. Good look at the driver's side. I guess the only critique I would say about the Off-Road Evolution skid plate here for the control arm and shock mount is it does have you use the existing bolts that you normally mount the shock to the shock mount, and once you throw that 3/16 steel skid plate around it, it does tend to I mean, it catches enough threads, but I would have preferred that they give you a new longer bolt with it, but it serves its purposes. So here's a look at the front of the skid plate, and what I ended up doing, believe it or not, all of this is duct seal. There's a huge pocket there that goes underneath and curves around, goes underneath the control arm. And I just, quite honestly, got so sick of it being jammed up and filled up with mud, and it was a real pain in the neck, even with a pressure washer to get it out. So this is almost like a clay. It kind of dries hard, but it has some flexibility, and I just use it because it fills that void, and it helps me with cleaning. Once again, look at the driver's side lower control arm and skid plate. Very pleased with this component. I love these rock gliders that Rancho has that fit so nicely into the differential armor. Good product right there. Okay, looking from the driver's side across the bottom of the Jeep. So right here we have the evap canister sitting up here. So a couple options here. Once again, I went with the Off-Road Evolution evap canister armor. And this is 1/4 inch steel. It's very, very stout. and you can see that it has taken some shots, small dent there, but it's definitely done a really good job. I'm real pleased with it. The other options, of course, would be to relocate it up and out of the way above the rear differential. I went with the armor route, and I think it's been really good. No complaints about this at all. Nice piece of hardware. Okay, so we're looking at the bulk of the rock hard 4x4 1/4-inch steel belly armor. You can see that the transfer case, obviously the weight of this Jeep has come down many times on this, and you can see it somewhat has bent, and it's a little bit concave, but nowhere near affecting the transfer case or causing it any harm. So it's definitely done its job. You can see some separation there from where the system connects to the gas tank armor, which also has taken its fair share of abuse, but it's held up nice. I'm pleased with it. Obviously, I got to get in here with a pressure washer, give it a good cleaning, and tighten. One of the things I'm going to be doing is checking the tightness of some of these bolts, and perhaps even putting some red Loctite on them. I'm entertaining that. So I'm going to reposition and talk about perhaps one of the negatives of this system. And you'll notice the system comes with like a gray powder coat on it. When I got it, I painted it red, and for the most part, I mean, yeah, there's some rust where you can see I've scraped and got right down to the steel, but you can just touch this up with any paint, and I'll be doing that this summer, no doubt. So I'm going to reposition and talk about the transmission cross member piece, which comes, that's one of the attachments that you change out. You put a real beefy one in, and it's really integral to how this whole system ties in. All right, so when I bought this system as a kit altogether, maybe in total it was somewhere around $1,300, I think. So I bought the transmission cross member. When you compare the one from Rock Hard 4x4, really superior in strength, and it really is a key component, because everything kind of ties in. The engine armor, the armor piece underneath the motor comes down and ties in, and then the transfer case skid plate ties into it. So I guess if you were going to talk about a negative, obviously there's an overlap system here. So the idea is, as the vehicle is moving forward, you come across any rocks and you glide over. So what Rock Hard 4x4 does is they give you these long bolts, and they give you these washers. I believe they call them their rock dome washers. And of course, the idea is that it protects the head of the bolt so that you can one day get a socket on it. And obviously you want to hit a rock and basically roll over it. But of course you lose a little bit of clearance there as well. And you can see that one of mine actually was severely damaged, and I haven't replaced it yet, and I just went with traditional washers. But look at the damage there now. I'll probably have to put a set of vice grips on that to change that. So they sell them for $10. But when you go with this system, what ends up happening is all kinds of mud and debris get in here, and in addition to that, the steel folds over from rocks, from all the weight. So now what has to happen is, for me to check these, I'm going to get in there with a screwdriver and clear it all out. Then I take a special little cutting tool that gets mounted on my Dremel, and then I go around it and open it up so it's wide enough for me to then fit the socket over the bolt and check the tightness. So I'm going to be doing that today, doing some maintenance on it. Another thing to point out about this system. So because I still run the stock front drive shaft, and I think one of the reasons I've done so well with this, generally speaking, this is a component that gets changed fairly soon. They use a RZEPPA joint on the transfer case side, and it doesn't do well with the steep angle. But because I only went with a 2.5-inch suspension lift, the angle isn't so great, and it's actually held up remarkably well. But obviously, changing this out to possibly like an Adams 1350 front drive shaft is on the things to do list. So because of that, because I still run this fat front drive shaft, but nowhere near as strong as some of the aftermarkets, I had to put the exhaust spacers in my exhaust so that I could move the crossover pipe backwards and not have any clearance issues when the drive shaft flexes. So by doing that, the crossover pipe ended up being very, very close. It sits right in here. It ended up, in some cases, almost touching this skid plate. So Rock Hard 4x4 gives you a 1/4-inch plate that you put in here to space it all downward, and that's in there too. So I guess a negative would be, in my case, in my application, is I mean, we're only talking an extra 1/4 of an inch, but that's a lot. So when I change my front drive shaft out, I will remove the exhaust spacers, slide the crossover pipe forward, thereby gaining some height, because I'll then be able to remove the 1/4-inch spacer that I needed for clearance to stop all the vibration and noise from the crossover pipe. So that's something that'll get done. Kind of a pain in the ass job, but eventually that will get done. So I'm going to reposition and look at some more shots of this particular skid plate under the motor. I should make mention of this tiny little piece right here. So here's a piece that comes with the kit, and it ties in with nuts and bolts, Allen button head bolts right here. And then it only comes with, I think, one bolt right here. I wanted to secure this up better, so I was able to put my finger in here and get another nut and bolt this up tight. I think the idea is to maybe afford some protection from the loop. As you can see, I still have my loop, and it's actually surprisingly done pretty well. A slight little scrape there, but as you know, they make the loop delete kit, and that's probably a good idea, just to get rid of the loop altogether, and then have the exhaust come straight down and just get rid of that. Okay, so at the front of the vehicle, looking down, you can really get a sense of the kind of abuse that this 1/4-inch steel has taken. So, I told you, maybe one of the cons, you lose a little bit of clearance underneath there with the overlap system, in particular with the fact that I run an extra spacer for clearance for the crossover pipe. But considering that one con, I mean, look at the abuse. Look at the gas tank. You can see even the 1/4-inch steel it's a little wobbly there. I mean, it has taken severe abuse. I believe it was money well spent, and I really think it's done its job. But basically, how I ended up with this is I did that a few years back, and this armor's been on this Jeep like 3 years now. I did that run up in Munson, Mass, Go Topless Day, and I did a couple rocky blue trails, and I was just really surprised at the amount of damage to the stock armor. I mean, it looked like a crumpled up beer can. So I knew then that I gotta protect this undercarriage much better. Good shot of the control arms have definitely, these are stock control arms, and you know what? They've held up really nice. One of the things I'll be doing today will be checking all the torques on all 8 of my control arms. You can see that 9/16 head bolt in that little trap door. Even that, sometimes you have to Dremel out and clean in order to get a socket on it, open it up, and then that door opens, and then you then have access to the drain plug at the oil pan. Notice the bracket right there on the passenger side of the oil pan. That goes up and ties into the motor mount, and then there's one on the driver's side as well. Last summer, I had a real loud clanking noise, and to my surprise, one of those big nut and bolts, even though the nuts have they're nylon nuts, came loose, and it was dangling and rattling up against the front drive shaft. So it was an easy fix. I just tie wrapped it up out of the way and then rebolted it at a later time. I'm looking through from the front of the Jeep past my steering stabilizer at the oil pan. And one of the first pieces of armor that I put on some years ago was the Rubicon Express engine oil pan armor. That was like 120 bucks, but it was pretty nice. So it in no way interfered with the rock hard 4x4 system. So quite honestly, I just left it there. In regards to my front control arms, I went with the Rancho skid plates for the lower mount. And once again, they've done their job. I have no complaints. I do know some people that said they had some issues with maybe one of the sides popping out a little bit, and they entertained welding them. But mine are bolted on, and one side hooks over the mount on the axle, and then the bolt, of course, goes through the control arm, and it all gets pinched in there and torqued, and pretty pleased with it. And then, as you know, that gets us to the front differential, running again the Rancho front diff armor with the rock glider made by Rancho. And this, I just changed this out, I don't know, a couple months ago, 2-3 months ago, and that was after a few years of serious abuse. Again, this was all very much worth it to me to put this armor on. I mean, it has done its job. You can see severe bends, but all the vital components have been protected. Gas tank, differentials, lower control arms, transfer case, transmission, and of course the motor. So with the long wheelbase, with serious rock crawling, this was just essential equipment. And I know it hurts to spend the money on something like this, but I do believe it was worth it, and it did the job I needed it to do. So today I'm going to check some of the tightness, some of the bolts, make sure they're all tight, and maybe even remove some of them and put some Loctite on them and redo them. It's kind of a shit job, but it's something that really should be done. And I'll probably also check the torques on my front diff, make sure all these bolts are tight as well. I did use Loctite on these. I have had these leak before. I used the lube blocker gaskets on the front and rear. Love them. They've been great. Just tighten them up and the leak stops. So just wanted to take some moments and talk about the belly armor. Again, going with the larger wheel, the 37-inch tires. I already noticed it on my shakedown run that I hit a lot less. So I do think that this belly armor has really worked well for me, and the hope with the larger tire that I can give it somewhat of a break. It definitely has taken a beating to protect the vital components on the underside of this Jeep. So rock hard 4x4, great job, great product. So out of a lot of different odd freaking jobs that I do, this one here really sucks. So what you can see here is basically I'm trying to clean this all out as best I can with this pick tool. And then you can see that the metal is all beveled in from grinding up against rocks. I'll then get my Dremel tool and cut some of this out right here. The idea being I'm trying to make enough room to get the socket around it. So I've got that one left to do, and that one there, and you can just see how bad these things get. So that's a negative, but I really do need to this thing here, I'll have to vice grip it. That rock dome washer I just lost. I mean, the damn thing got loose, and I came home and it was completely missing. So I found another bolt and some big washers, and that one I cleaned out already with the pick tool. And I just got to get in there with the Dremel, and hopefully I can get a socket on these and pull them out, or at least make sure they're tight. If they're tight, great. If they're not, I'm going to pull them out and put some red Loctite on them and then reinsert them. So that's what's going on. Okay, this is the second time I've done this process, and that's basically clean these rock dome washers out and then take a Dremel, get all the twisted metal out of the way, and the next thing will be to get a socket on them and check them for tightness. A couple years ago I checked them and there was some play in them, so, and as you can see I gotta order a new rock dome washer for that second bolt in from the left. But total shit job, but it's something that I really do have to do, because this belly armor takes such a severe beating and it really needs to be tight and not rattling around. So that's today's mission, and so far so good. It's just a lousy job to do. Okay, not one of my favorite jobs, but pulled out all of these bolts, cleaned them up nice. There was play in them. I mean, it's been probably about 1.5 years since I've done this job. And then retightened them up, reinstalled them, used some red LOCTITE, and in some cases I replaced a couple. I had some extra bolts laying around. So that was one job that needed to be done. I also ended up, the bracket that goes around the front differential for that glide plate, that thing had taken a good shot and was kind of bent already up at the top. So I added some washers so I could have some more thread on the bolts to tighten the upper portion of that glide plate. So a couple good things that happened. Control arms still need to be torqued, and I've got to order one rock dome washer for that bolt that you see there.